Welcome back to the Lounge by Travefy. I'm Stephanie Grice, and this is episode 3 of our sales workshop series, where we're diving into the full sales journey from mindset and marketing all the way through to creating a system that keeps your sales pipeline flowing. And in our last episode, if you caught that, we talked all about marketing and how to attract the right clients to your business. But once those leads come in, what happens next? And so that's what we're here today to talk about. Today's conversation is really all about building a sales workflow that actually works, one that helps you follow up, close more bookings, and turn clients into those lifelong fans. Now, to help us break it all down, I am joined by industry thought leader and founder and CEO of Trips and Ships Luxury Travel and also Luxury Travel University, Angela Hughes. So thank you, Angela, for joining us today.
Well, thanks. I always love to be on the show, and this topic's one of my favorites, so this is a good one.
Yes. See, and I knew who to call in for this. I was like, Angela, we are going to be doing this episode that I think you can completely deliver on. So we're in for a treat. So thank you so much.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
I know there's just so much to cover. And I know that you see it all the time. You work with so many advisors. So I'm really, really excited to just kind of break down and really cover, when it comes to building and sustaining a successful sales workflow. So what I want to do is I wanted to first break down the sales pipeline. So my first question for you here is, many advisors, we hear this all the time. A lot of advisors say that they get leads in, but just not enough bookings from those. So where do you think most sales pipelines start to fall apart and what you see?
Yeah, I think, and I've learned this from experience, that most advisors confuse leads with opportunities. So just because you have a full inbox of leads doesn't mean you necessarily have like a full pipeline. And that's a word that I want to use a lot today, is a marketing funnel, a marketing pipeline. And I think the breakdown often occurs right after the inquiry. Advisors get all super excited. They start taking in information. They're overly passionate about something. And then it's like crickets, or there's no structured like next step, or they break the follow-up rhythm. And so I think that we really have to like discuss what like lead gen looks like and what that inquiry conversation looks like, because it's almost right there that people have a disconnect with the client. They're not looking for cues, because a lot of rookie advisors and even older advisors are just so anxious to throw out information and show that, oh, I've been there and I'm an expert and I can tell you what to do, that they miss all the cues. So the
Yes.
breakdown's right there in that qualification stage, I think.
Interesting. So that's the question I was just going to ask, is what are those signs that you typically see where the sales process isn't working as efficient? And so you think it is, and that would make a lot of sense because that's towards the beginning part of it.
Yeah.
So what are some ways to notice that and fix it?
Well, I think always start with like 10 to 15 minute like qualifier call. I call them discovery calls. Too often your friend will text and be like, oh, can you help me go to Maui? Or, I want to do an all-inclusive, or I want to do a Europe trip, and you're kind of texting back and forth. Let me send you over some quotes. That's not effective sales strategy. You want to be in a lead generation and an inquiry conversation where you're reading. I love Zoom now. And this is the interesting thing, is prior to COVID, not very many people Zoomed with their clients. I used to be in my younger days, and I'm going to be 57 this next week. So now I can say younger because I'm creeping into old age very fast. But in my younger days, I used to try to think like I'd be more effective the faster I worked. Like if I could just turn around a lead, if I could get a quote out fast, didn't have to talk to the client very much. I was very transactional. And where I became successful was where I became relationship oriented. And that meant having a conversation and taking time to get to know the client, becoming a part of their lifestyle, and having that discovery call. Even though it's time consuming, you read body image and cues from that, because you're talking to someone's face and you're starting to listen to things like, oh, I need to talk to my husband about that. And that right there, or I need to talk to my wife right there. that's almost going to always be a failed sell when they say that. First of all, if they have to take it back to somebody, then right there is where that disconnect just happened. And maybe they're going to circle back, but most of the time they're saying, I'm not really ready to commit. And so you could start like listening to cues in there and language and face. And when you're talking about budget, what's their nervous, you know, level on that? Oh, I don't know what the budget is. Right there, if they tell you, "Oh, well, I don't even know what my budget is," I'll often come back to people and say, like, well, you work on that budget because everybody has a mental price point in their mind, and they usually don't wanna say. And so what happens is agents will, spit out this wonderful, like, itinerary, and then they'll come back and they're like, "Well, we didn't wanna spend that much," or, "That's about 10,000 more." Well, wait, you did have a budget in your mind, and you didn't say it, and so, again, a disconnect. So you see how that communication pattern's, like, so super important, and we usually zoom by it because we're afraid to ask the tough questions. But I'll say to people like, "Okay, you guys work on that budget. Let's circle back when you've got something established." Because it's either budget. Who's the communicator? I mean, who's going to be the one making the decisions? Especially in high end travel, in lower end travel, it's almost always the woman. And I'm talking between 5 and maybe 20,000. Once it goes 20 to 100,000 or 30 to 100,000, then it becomes more male dominated. I've seen from my interactions. And so you want to make sure the decision makers are in the room where it happens,
That's true.
Yeah.
That's a good point. There's so many little things. So it's almost like do you usually have, or do you see really successful advisors have almost a list of everything they need to make sure they hit? Because that's a good point. That every trip could be different too. That you're looking for different cues.
Well, I don't really love when people have, an intake form because that almost is a sure sign that somebody's not going to complete the form. I don't like to complete forms, even a credit card authorization. You know what I'm saying? And of course, we're going to have a credit card authorization, but you know what I'm saying? Anytime like somebody has to fill out a big form, people are going to jump off ship somewhere in that form, especially like an older couple as well. And so you can have those questions in your mind. I've done so many discovery calls. I think the most important thing is just listening. Tell me about how you travel. Tell me where you've been. What types of vacations have you taken? Um, I never go right to budget because you can kind of tell in talking to people. I was traveling with some uber high net worth people last week, and they started talking about how they wanted to take a trip to Japan with their kids. But in the conversation, she said, "Oh, we're kind of the Rick Steves do it yourself type," and that was really an interesting reveal that she said just right in that conversation because I thought, okay, Rick Steves do it yourself. They and she talked about all the little, bed and breakfasts, and we like to find this and that, and I thought, I don't care how much money they have, they're probably not my ideal client because I don't fit kind of that Rick Steves do-it-yourself model, and that was an interesting reveal, and I wouldn't have gotten that if I didn't talk to her. I would assume like, hey, they're wealthy, they probably have the money to spend, but their style of do-it-yourself is not my style, right? And probably not our agency style. And so again, you learn so much from the conversation and a mistake advisors make is they want to talk, 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 talk. And I'm a talker. I'm very passionate about things. I like to like show expertise and authority, and so should you. But this is a very important time to sit and just listen. And you become the last 5 minutes of the conversation. They talk for 10 minutes and you'll start learning things you didn't even know about that person. Tell me about this, tell me about this, tell me about this. And then towards the end, you'll start talking budget. Do you have a price point? And sometimes I don't even ask price point, but I almost always do because even higher end clients have a mental number in their mind. So if there's someone that you've worked with a lot and you know their style of travel, you don't probably even need to ask the budget. If they've consistently done nice trips and stayed in five-star properties with amenities, etc., private drivers, you don't need to have that budget conversation. But In the early stages of first obtaining that client, I mean, the goal is to have a relationship with them for 10 years. And so you just kind of know their style. But in those early days, that conversation is very important.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So step 1 is get on that call. So when you get that person, is that's what I was gonna ask is if you could walk through, like, a simple pipeline, like, what that would look like, but the discovery call, huge, really big, very
Huge.
important step.
Huge.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that's a qualification time. That is the very top of the marketing funnel. That's all about awareness. And that's when you're going to determine, am I attracting the right clients? Too many advisors come to me and say, I did all of this work and then the person took the trip and ran. And I say,
Ugh,
shame on
yeah.
you because that's your problem because you let that client move down your path. You handed them everything and you never had secured them in the beginning. And that falls back to the advisor. It's not the client that ran. They either didn't charge a service fee, they didn't show their value. There was a disconnect. And the person took all the information and said, "Great, I've got everything I need. I'm just going to go ahead and book this or move on from you."
Yeah. What about when you like, once you actually do book the trip, do you see ever anything that goes wrong after the deposit's been collected, things are getting booked? Do you see any other mistakes that typically might happen along the way?
Well, I mean, first of all, if your conversion rate is under 20%, and this is a thing that advisors don't do is they don't track conversion rate. And I think that's really important to do. I'm a numbers and data techie geek, and that's why you and I get along. Yeah, we're tech geeks. But conversion's really important to understand your numbers of how many leads are you getting and how many are you converting? Okay. Because again, advisors spend all this time in this leaked process. They're in reinventing how to do their Travefy better. And I know this is a Travefy show, but they spend so much time on Travefy, and they need to
Yeah.
be working on the conversion. So right there, that mindset and that system, um, they fear that they're going to be like too salesy and they don't have an organization set into place. Um, and so right there, they need to e start the process. They can't have leaks. Once they get to the deposit, that's a different stage. That's something we should talk about a little bit further down the road in this conversation. But they need to be mapping out like that workflow right from every single touch point in the beginning, um, to when that client returns home. What's their workflow going to be? And don't overcomplicate it, you know? If you have to use a whiteboard with sticky notes or, um, just a document, fine. You'll immediately see where you drop the ball.
Mhm.
Mm.
That's a
Mhm,
good
mm.
point. You really will. Yeah, it'll be like, "Well, that's not really working," and
Yeah,
I could totally see that. One question I have for you though, because speaking of tech, we love our tech
yeah,
around here, is one of the big things that, is just very, very big right now, is automation, and
yeah,
automation can help you, but also when should you automate versus when to personalize? Because I can see that being a little bit of a balance as well. It'll help you stay in your workflow, but also
sure.
knowing when to personalize.
Yeah, I think in the nurture zone, it's so important that you don't automate. That's where I don't love that intake form.
Mhm.
That's where okay, I'm gonna say right off the bat, when somebody sends me a lead, you should be responding within 30 minutes. There's all types of data that shows how important that like early just hour is. I have a business card that I've just screenshotted. The minute a client like contacts me, I'll immediately text them. So if it came in as a lead off of Travel Leaders per se through their agent profiler program or it came through your Virtuoso lead system, immediately text that client and be like, "Hey, I want to set up a time to talk with you." Drop your business card and, immediately just make that touch point with them. That's the very most important thing. I think we even jumped ahead of ourselves before the discovery call. So in a way you're starting an automation, but really the pipeline begins there, but the automation starts when we start working on everything because you're going through that nurturing process, but now once you're trying to convert that client, now you're jumping into using Travefy as a system. You're building the trip for them. You're going back and forth until it closes, and that's a very important time. So You're going to send out the lead, you're going to send out your terms and conditions, you're going to send out your credit card authorization form, you're going to send out your travel insurance. That's all automated for me. That all ships out with the quote. And prior to that, if you're charging a service fee, that's gonna go out even prior to that. So, be service fee and then all of that, to lock it in. You will close a deal almost 100% of the time when someone pays a service fee. That's the great thing. Those sales don't fail. And if someone's uncommitted to charging a service fee, they're probably uncommitted to the trip. And you have to determine when you're gonna charge that as well. Like, sometimes I don't do that on a simple all-inclusive or like a cruise booking because there's not that big of a margin there. And I'll tell people anytime you have a custom booking, we charge a fee. And then sometimes if I feel like people are super hesitant and they're not quite in the budget point, eh, then I'll say like, "Hey, but if we do a coach tour or something maybe with like a Globus or Trafalgar type experience or a simple cruise that just needs some pre and post, then maybe we'll waive this because you're a brand new client for us and we want to keep you in the funnel. We want to keep you at the agency." And they feel like maybe they're getting value. Now, I know some people are opposed to like waiving fees, but sometimes you have to do that. But you're going to learn in that qualifier stage whether or not that client is going to pay the fee or maybe they're not gonna pay the fee. It's a delicate balance, I've waived it, and some advisors are like, "I never waive, I will never waive," and I have waived. I don't charge my high-end clients, my super uber high net worth clients, I don't even charge them a fee because I know their buying power, and I know what they're gonna deliver, and we charge fees to keep people loyal to us, so we don't feel like we've done a lot of work. So, I know that was a lot that you didn't even ask
No.
me.
No, I love it.
That's
I
great. That's
literally I was
always with
just
me. You're gonna get a lot more than you, like, asked.
no, I love it. I know the listeners are like, "Yes," writing notes down. No, I actually now I have a new question for you that I didn't think we
Y
were gonna touch on because
Yeah.
fees is really big. And I know one of the things that we hear a lot is, the hard part with introducing the fees for people, I think, is a lot of times when to ask for it. And so, I'm assuming for you, is it typically do you recommend when you're in the discovery call
Yes.
itself and you're like, "Okay, let's move forward," and that's
Yeah, I
the
usually
easiest?
it you know, after they've talked for 10 minutes, I usually say, "Let me go ahead and tell you how our agency works." I talk about my experience, my value, and that's probably a 2, 3-minute thing. I mean, they've already found me, so they've probably read something on me. That's your time to, like, really shine and, like, say, "Hey, I'm valuable. You're gonna wanna work with me." This is where people think like, "I'm not salesy, I'm shy, I don't know if I can get out of the box, I'm nervous, I might have, imposter syndrome or not feel like I can present a fee." Well, listen, people, get doing it. You gotta you've gotta do it. You gotta just shine right there. That's your minute, you know? And then you present your fees. And don't just be a 50 or $100 or $200, girl or guy, you know? High fees sell. You wanna charge higher fees. We're not low income people in travel, you know? I mean, we wanna put out the bigger fee because I don't work for less, you know? And that keeps me kind of like in the Nordstrom's world and not in the Walmart world, nothing against the brands, but you know what I'm saying? Like, they have no problem charging you for the same shirt almost that probably everybody got at Shein and relabeled, you know, a higher fee. So
Yes, no, and no, it makes sense. And that's the thing with fees, and I love the analogy, the good old analogy of all the time, like, well, when you go to, like, a lawyer or something, you're
yeah.
purchasing services, it's by you're paying something,
Uh-huh.
and it's not just the end result or,
Right.
which would be the trip. There's so much. So, going back into the flow here, so you have your discovery call, and let's say
Yeah.
that it all worked out well. You got the fee going, they're
Right.
filling out the forms of, credit card authorization, deposit. Then what is next in your sales pipeline? Because a lot of times I think people think it ends there, and it's almost like the next part has just begun.
Yeah, it's actually just begun because now you're
Mhm.
nurturing the cell, right? So that's the middle of the marketing funnel, and that's really important. And that's where I love Travefy. I mean, believe it or not, I was up at 2 a.m. I'm in London right now, putting together. Somebody's actually in Europe, and they're like, "Hey, we're going to add on 15 more days," and I was like, "Let me hurry and just throw that together for you." And luckily, I had Travefy to kind of like stack that all up for me and just get that. and I could just book those hotels really fast. And I don't even really book my own travel. I have people that do it for me, but because I was going to hurry and just design this and we weren't using a DMC and I could just do it really quickly, I first of all, thank you guys for creating
Yes.
Travefy. I know for 5 years I've been thanking you on your shows, but here I am, 2 a.m. Just, you know, that's a nice little organizer there. But the thing is now, like, you're designing the trip, and now you're gonna send that trip to them, hopefully through a Travefy link, and have them take that first look at it, and I'll call it a first look. Here's a first look. Let's take a minute to, just see what changes you wanna make. You're getting that trip in motion right there, and that is nurturing back and forth, and now I'm probably doing that via email, but I'm also generally sending them a text as well because I find that a lot of email falls into spam. I had that happen last week, didn't hear back on 2 Oceania cruises, and he was like, "I never got it." And I had sent it from Nepal, and I don't know what happened, but, I like to text people and go, "Hey, it's in your email box, just check in spam." I'd like to have a text relationship with people, and this is where it gets really tricky. Some advisors are like, "I don't like them to have access to my phone number. I don't like, I like to be able to turn it off at 5 o'clock." When you work with higher net worth people, you need to be available. You work on a concierge basis for some of these people. And for those people who want to tune out clients and not have that personal, like, "Hey, you can text me" type relationship, are probably doing themselves a disservice in the higher end space because people like that access to you. And that also opens up the door for future sales. And that's what's so super important because now I can text them, and I do this probably every quarter. "Hey, just dropping in to see if you need anything. Hey, it's New Year's. Here's my top 5 trips for this year that you might be interested in. Hey, it's been a while. Anything cooking?" You need to continually make yourself available. So if you haven't developed that kind of flow with somebody where they feel like they can reach out and text you like, "We're friends, we have a relationship," then you're missing out on future opportunities. So that's middle of the funnel where you're starting to build what's going to happen down the road as well, post trip.
Mhm. It's so, so important. And what about, do you ever have parts of your, like, pipeline where when it's getting booked, where you offer any upsells or additional, things to sell? Do you ever do that?
Oh, absolutely. So, I mean, I have to be honest, I don't book my trips. I actually don't do the physical work because I have a team that helps my clients. Because I still sell $3.5 million, but I'm also running a company and I'm traveling a lot, as
Yeah.
as you know. So I'm not actually physically doing the work. But here's the thing. I call it carrying the bag. And I say this like, sell everything in your bag. And that's a little bit because I'm married to an orthopedic device guy, and that's what they kinda say, like, "We sell everything in the bag, all the devices." But it translates so well because what does that look like? That's the travel insurance, that's the extra tours, that might be the extra private drivers, that might be a pre and post on a cruise. "Hey, don't do shore excursions with the cruises. We've got, private tours we could do." It depends what you're building. So yes, carry the whole bag. That's where you're going to make really great profit is in all of these little things that you can add on. So yes, I'm always trying to upsell. You get that trip in motion and then you always try to just keep pushing it down the train track and just adding more onto it. And that's where it's going to get really profitable.
How often, like, once you do, like, let's say I'm doing a trip with you and your team, and I maybe have just paid my deposit. How long is it until you start approaching, "Hey, let's get this too," or have you thought about adding this on? Like, do you have a formula in your head of how often you reach back out?
Well, I think there needs to be multiple touch points. So you can't just be like, "Hey, deposits received. I'll talk to you at 90 days prior." I'll usually like, you should have an email flow that's going out to the client. And maybe the email flow looks like, "Hey, here's some weather tips. Here's some currency tips." As it gets closer, it's so great now. I mean, especially with AI, you can go on and be like, here's all the money. I love to send out like a money email, like how to do money and tips and how to best withdraw or use Apple Pay in Europe, or, just kind of that type of email. Or I like to do like a packing list. You need to be dripping content all along the way and have touch points. The more touch points you have, the more that those expectations are going to be met. They're not going to feel abandoned. And I have abandoned people. I will not lie. Again, I want to spend the least amount of time with a client in a way. I want to spend the most amount to develop the relationship, but in the same breath, believe it or not, I'm so extroverted but so introverted that, like I just want you know what I mean? Like, okay, we're good. Like, I don't want to talk to you for a while. And some people
Yeah.
you just don't want to talk to, but you have to continue nurturing that relationship. And sometimes that's where text just comes in handy. You can be like, oh, hey, yeah, have you thought about this? Really, like once the trip's done and you've collected the money and everything, I usually don't have a ton of add-ons after that. Unless something spectacular comes along. You should be thinking of those add-ons right in the beginning in the upsell there. You're not thinking about, "Hey, let's add on this down the road," because that can cause disruption in everything. You give them too many ideas when a trip's, already locked and loaded, then they're like, "Oh, maybe we should add an extra day," and then you're just asking for extra work. So, you wanna add everything on in the beginning and then let it just flow with, like, nice little email reminders along the way.
Honestly, that's probably really refreshing for so many people to hear. They're like, "Oh, thank gosh." Like, I don't wanna
Yeah.
open a whole can of worms all the
Don't open the
time.
can of worms. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And see, and that's where the automation I was gonna throw in a little Travefy pro tip because now you
Yeah.
can automate emails that come directly from you. So when you do have like those packing lists or, like the currency, I mean, you could set those up
Yeah.
and then like kind of get them to automate and they can still they're still coming from you. You get the reply immediately, and it's going to you like just like any other email. So the texting though I like. Might have to tell that to our product team. I like that idea too. Maybe if
Yeah, and
there's
one thing that
an
I wanna say is,
integration, that'd be
like,
cool.
yeah, it's really important. Especially think now in where we have AI and everybody's writing more of these, like, perfect emails. You wanna automate structure, you don't wanna automate emotion. So, hey, if you're gonna send out structure, which is so easy to do now with AI, make sure you personalize a little bit. Mention that
Mhm.
you're on the call with them. "Hey, thanks. How are your kids doing? How'd the birthday party turn out?" Or, make sure you add emotion, humanity into it.
Yeah,
You
like,
know?
"It was
People
great
are buying
chatting."
these
Yeah,
template
or
bundles, yeah, and just sending them
yeah.
out and I'm like, "Geez, they wanna know you. They're buying you, They're buying you as an advisor. They're not buying the templates. They're not buying Travefy. They're buying you as an advisor, and now you're using those as tools to make yourself look better."
Yes. Oh, that's such a good point. It is it's you. It's you. You are your brand. And so I think that
Yeah.
is really and I know because whenever I've just booked this summer with an agent and every single time I got something, I was like, "Yay, here it
Yeah.
is." And it's so exciting because it's just like it's just amazing stuff. Like this business is amazing because you deliver something that is incredible and people are going to be excited for it. So that's just so cool. There's so many opportunities there. But one other opportunity I wonder what you would typically recommend is when they actually get back from the trip.
Mhm.
What do you do then?
Okay, so I call this a follow-up framework, and or you called it the follow-up framework, and I'll tell you what I think about the follow-up framework. I don't usually text somebody when they're in route, while they're on their trips, because emotions generally are higher. I kind of think of it as like having a baby. You never talk to a mom like right after they had the baby. They'll tell you for 3 days how long that labor took, you know? And I'll give you a scenario of something. So when someone's traveling, I usually just let it go. Let me say, if they're with a destination management company, I'll usually put them in a WhatsApp group with me and I'll follow along with the destination management company. And I'll tell clients like 48 hours before you're going to be, usually a week before I put them in with the destination management company because they have some last minute questions. And then I don't have to do a ton of turnaround. That, DMCs in that conversation and they can answer those quick little 1 and 2 questions and we're all in there together. It's like High School Musical. We're all in it together. Um but once they start traveling, I tell them like everything's going to be directed to that they're like a concierge on the ground for you, okay? Now, it depends. If you're working with, like, Pleasant Holidays or Journeys or somebody, they've got an in-country number. Kensington does too. So, I kinda step out of the equation and turn it over to the professionals. That's why we hire tour companies. That's why we hire DMCs. And then I stay out of it unless I have to intervene. If I see that something's going dreadfully wrong, then I'm gonna intervene and talk to the client and get it resolved immediately. Don't let things go past the trip, though. We had some clients come back and 4 weeks later they complained to one of our advisors and I said, "Well, that's really interesting. They didn't say one thing on the trip. They were home multiple weeks. Then you reach out to them and they have a list of complaints on a high-end trip that was done." I go, "I don't buy into it because they didn't, you know, if there was an issue, they should have said it during the trip. Like to come back 6 weeks later and be like, we didn't like this or that, that's a little sketchy and cringy. But so the thing is like let the client flow. And then I think that after the booking, I usually give it a 2-week time frame and to welcome somebody home because now they've had the baby, you know, 2 weeks later. And it doesn't matter what it is. If something went wrong on the trip, 2 weeks later, the trip sounds better. You know, it's like giving birth, like the birth was hard, but 2 weeks later, you love the baby. Everything was amazing. And they usually are in a better mindset because that's the perfect time right there that you want to launch into, hey, what are you thinking next? Because when people travel, they usually are like planning their next trip. I mean, we're weird
Yes.
creatures. We're on the trip, but we're thinking about our next trip. Because part of the process of traveling is the stage before the trip. That's almost more exciting sometimes than taking the trip, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So give them
It
that
really
time
is.
frame to like grow, but don't let it go too far because you want to capitalize on that next thing. And I've made the mistake of letting it go too far and then all of a sudden they booked something else, or you're not capitalizing on maybe that future cruise credit or just things like that.
And I love the 2 week. That is interesting too, like the psychology behind it, because that's a very good
Yes.
point. That especially if you're just like 2 days after, you could be jet lagged. You're like, oh,
Tired, you're
this one
overwhelmed.
thing. Yeah, you're trying to get back in the groove of reality. Totally makes
Well, I'll give
sense.
you a scenario. I had a client come back from an amazing 2-week thing in Italy. I mean, everything went seamless on ours. Delta blew it though. They had booked their own air on Delta. Delta had put them, kicked them out of wherever they were in premium economy, put them in the back, crying baby right next to the restrooms. And it just kind of ruined that whole journey home. And that's all he could talk about. And I'm like, I hadn't, he's like, it was great. But, Delta did this and this and this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, A, nothing to do with me. And then B, that's all he's thinking about because that was his last moment of the trip. And that now he's exhausted and tired. And you don't want to encounter that. You want to wait till now he's told 6 friends that, he had an amazing time and they're back on, just the moon.
Yeah. No, I like that. It's see, and that's the thing. There's so many I've heard a lot of stories like that where it's something completely out of the advisor's control. And even though the traveler technically knows that, it still kind of falls. So that's really interesting, just kind of waiting. And another question for you though is what about so you follow up like 2 weeks after, but then do you have like a marketing nurture system planned out just to keep everything going, like maybe months later, a year later? Do you do
Yeah.
anything there?
Yeah, always send the thank you note. Always request feedback, and try to create some type of like re-entry offer so people will book with something in the future. But what I really like to do is get the review. That is one of the most important things. Capture a review. And sometimes I'll share that like, maybe they're just texting me. I'll be like, "Hey, do you have a minute to talk about your trip?" And they're like, "Oh, it was so great, da 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 da." And they don't really want to do a follow-up. Um, but right there, they've just given me a review on my phone and I'm screenshotting that. And now I'm sending that straight out to social media, just raw. You don't need to go into Canva and build some cutesy review. Just screenshot that and share it out to your people because I'll just be like, thank you. And I'll throw it right in my stories. And then in my Instagram, I'll keep like a review highlight reel or, a highlight and, I have 100 different things in there. You could turn that into a reel, you could turn that into a story, but it shows raw. I don't always believe reviews when agents go out to Canva and create the beautiful, like, John and Jane just went to Jamaica and here was their wedding and they said this, well, great. Anybody could make that up, A raw review just has social authority with it, which is really important. And then you need to keep like building a repeatable system, a workflow system to continually document, you know, everything that happens post trip in turn because you want to stay in that cycle because now at the end of that marketing funnel, John and Jane are talking to their friends about the trip. Now they're working for you. Now they're selling you as an advisor. They're selling the trip. They might be recommending you. That is like gold right there. That's gold. You got a little social authority. You got them talking about you. So you want to keep those touch points going because they might be saying, yeah, And you reach out, a couple weeks later, "Oh, hey, you guys thinking about next trip yet, or is it too soon?" And you just keep it light. And then they're like, "Oh, we're taking a break right now, but, definitely this fall, let's get in touch." Now you have a date in mind, you put that on the calendar and now, and you're continually dripping content. And this is where people don't do a great job because they never go through the whole funnel. They're not dripping continuous content to that person, of new ideas. I'll text things out, and this is an honest to God, like, thing that happened. A client one year told me, "Oh, one time we wanna do an around the world trip with, one of these," and they showed me a Four Seasons around the world thing. I happened to be, like, at ILTM Cannes and I was at the Abercrombie and Kent Villa, and I was with the VP, Sean, and I go, "Hey," and he's talking to me about, the around the world trips and their private jet journeys and everything. I go, "Let's take 30 seconds and just make a video together for my client." And I text the client and I said, "Hey, I'm here with Sean from Abercrombie, and, their around the world jets came out." Now, she'd mentioned that a year and a half prior. And I said, you're gonna wanna take a look at this." And I dropped a 30-second video to her of a message that he made for her. She bought it, $375,000.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh,
Yeah. I
wow.
did it again with Windstar. I was like, "This is working great." I did it with Diana Rahm at Windstar, sent it out to 2 people. They bought the Windstar cruise. That is, like, such a great way of, like, just dripping content. They feel like it's personalized. You don't always have to be with a rep, but, sometimes I'll just be like, "Hey, I'm here in front of this. You have got to do this." I was on Explore Journeys a couple weeks ago in Turkey and Greece. Shipped that off to a few people. "You're gonna love this ship. Try this out." You know? Drip,
Yes.
drip, be creative. It doesn't always have to be this workflow of, like, staunchy emails and, get fun
Yeah, it
with
doesn't have to
video.
be yeah, like, I love the idea of being fun with it.
Yeah,
It's just relationship. This is going back all the way to the very beginning of what you said, that you are building a relationship, and that's what this is. I
yeah,
love it.
100%. Yeah, so you gotta have a workflow, you gotta stick with it. You've gotta go through all the motion, but at the end of the day, like, be human. Human is the best marketing tool. Be person to person. Everybody's like, "Ah, what's your tip?" And I'm like, "Be real, be a person, have a real relationship with people." Advisors get too stuck into systems and tools, and I know this is a system and tool podcast, and we want you in systems and tools 100%, that they forget that your best marketing is you and being human.
Yep.
That's free. That is free.
Yeah. I know, that's the thing, that it is free. Well, and that's what we say at Travefy, we power the success. So it's not just like,
Oh, I love
"Oh,
that.
purchase
Yeah.
this and you will do well." No, it's just that we're helping power you. Like, so I think it's a really good
Yeah.
reminder, especially in this world today. You can use, like, AI and automations to help support you, but
Right,
it's still,
right.
at the end of the day, is a human connection. And yeah, I love it. And that's actually been a very consistent theme on all these episodes, is it's always coming back to that's where you win, is having that human connection. So I love that. Well, and I have one final question here for
Okay.
you. So once someone has, like, their workflow, they've been listening to this, they're writing it down, how do they make sure it actually sticks? Because I'm sure it's going to take just one person to throw you off really easily. So what would you recommend, like, to help them make this stick?
Yeah, well, first of all, you have to be consistent, and this is something I say everywhere I speak, like, consistency is just king, and then you have to build accountability. Here's the problem, we've got a lot of advisors, 100,000 that entered the market post-COVID, and they kind of float in and out. Nurse during the day, realtor at night, selling some travel on the side to their friends. They're the ones that aren't selling and building consistently, and they usually won't make it past 2 years in the industry. I mean, most small businesses fell within 2 years. I don't care what small business you're in, travel or otherwise. And it's mostly because those systems and tools weren't in place. They didn't invest in the beginning. And do you remember, like, in 2020 when I called you when Travefy came out and I was like, "Who are you? I love this."
How do I
Like,
get involved in this? Like,
I know, I was like, "Where did this come from?" Like, I think that was, like, one of the best days of my life because so pre-COVID, like, we didn't have, credit card authorizations, we didn't really have terms and conditions, we didn't have a workflow, we're kinda using every Google tool we've got and spreadsheets and everything, and and advisors need to know we've come so far in the last 5 or 6 years.
oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yes,
It's
I
crazy.
remember calling you. I was in Philadelphia sitting at a national park, and I was like, "You don't know me, but when is all this coming out?"
Yeah,
And
but I think I
what's
need
coming down
you.
the pipeline? Yeah, but so, making the workflow stick, but you have to be consistent. You can't just show up, every couple weeks and hope that you're gonna build a solid business. It just doesn't work that way. And I tell people, like, I wake up every day, you're always gonna see me on social media. That's part of the very top of the funnel is getting on there and engaging with people and recognizing people. It's not just you posting, it's you getting on engaging with other people and again building relationships. I'm also doing real media, not just social, like, regular public affairs, public relations. I'm also volunteering. I'm, doing things to build relationships with people, and so that all needs to be part of your life, you know, because people think, oh, if I just post, I'm not getting clients, and then the clients I get aren't booking, and this is really frustrating, and then they kind of jump ship. You have to know how to build content, build accountability, build consistency, and then refine it and review. You got to review your workflow quarterly to see what's working because things are shifting really quick. You are going to get lost in the AI hustle and bustle. I heard people last week I was in Nepal with groups of private equity and hedge funders. And I usually travel with those groups that I've got. And I heard somebody just say right at the table, "Oh, yeah, I love AI. I just build all my trips in there now. It's so easy. I get suggestions I never even thought of." And I thought, whoa, ouch. I know you're on the group trip, but they weren't clients of ours. They just signed up to go with the firm that, brought everybody together. But I thought that was really telling. We know that that's happening. I use it too. And, we need to be using AI to get ahead in our workflows and our patterns and work smarter, not harder. But in the same breath, if you're an advisor who's just like, hey, casually floating along in this game of travel of this retirement playground or, you know, you're going to get so dissolved so quickly by what's coming ahead. I'm a huge techie, a huge AI girl, and I'm just telling you, like, you need to get ahead of it now with the way that you're using it to build your authority because I mean, every industry is going to be impacted by it. We run a huge risk of that, but let's be smarter about it and you need to be thinking about selling in the premium or higher space. That's why I'm the luxury travel girl, because people in the high net worth space, I don't care how many tools you give them, they don't want to do it. You know, they might look there first, but if they can hand it off to somebody and they can continue to make money and build in the space that they're good at, they're never going to do it themselves. In fact, I had a high net worth client, the same one that bought the Abercrombie and Kent jet, reach out to me and she goes, geez, AI says that's really going to impact the travel. I hope that you're going to be okay. And I said, yeah, Mrs. X, I'll just say, I don't want to say her name. I said, that's great, but I don't see you ever booking your own travel. And she's like, absolutely right.
Yeah,
She's
you're
just
like,
not going
"That's
to she was genuinely concerned for me. And I thought that was interesting. But yeah, in the same breath, she's just not going to ever go on and just do it herself. You create a safe space when you sell in the higher end space.
Oh, I love that, and actually, this segues very well into my final question for you is, where can listeners find you? Because I know you also do coach, especially for a lot of advisors who do wanna enter that luxury travel space, so can you share and I'll make sure to put the links you share in our show notes too.
Yeah, so my personal website is just over at luxurytraveluniversity.com. And then I have my Facebook group, Luxury Travel Social Media and Marketing on Facebook. And you can also find me, in lots of media, Insider Travel Report, lots of different media. And then on TikTok, not really on TikTok. My kids are making me do that, but on Instagram at Trips and Shifts, also on TikTok. I feel ridiculous saying TikTok because I'm not a TikToker.
No, TikTok is a great okay, so here's you'll have to come back and let us know how it works for you, and maybe we'll have you back on, and you can tell us everything
My
that you
TikTok
tried,
journey,
what you
because I
found success in.
yeah. Well, I committed to 1 year with my soon to be 22-year-old and I'm finding it so here's the interesting thing why I actually committed to the platform 10 years late. We were in Greenland and everything's turning to small content and 1 in 5 people are actually finding um inspiration through 8-second short videos, short content. And I was always, pretty well established in the Instagram space and in the Facebook space, but, I decided to shift over to, like, more short form video, and I do video and reels anyway, a lot, and even experimenting with the AI reels, they're kind of been fun to just have some fun with, but, TikTok so far hasn't been my ideal client avatar. I'm attracting a lot of, you know, interesting men from Greece and Turkey after
Oh,
I just
no.
traveled there.
Oh,
You
no.
know, you gotta think where you're building, what your long-term goal is on this, and that's a whole nother conversation for us. So far, I'm not finding it to be my ideal client avatar, but I'm learning a lot of I'm just doing a one-year test on it, you know? That's what I
I
committed to.
love that.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we usually what a lot of, like, these podcasts, when we have these webinars of industry education, and that's exactly what it is you're trying something new, so you're experimenting, and you're
Yes.
giving it enough time. So
Well, one
kudos
of
to
the things
you.
with short-term video is that actually feeds the algorithm really well with the way that people are searching in Google now, where we used to like run Facebook ads and different things. Now you can push yourself up the algorithm further because video sticks longer. We've always known that. So there's some long-term benefits of having more exposure. It's very painful though. Like I said, I'm a grandmother. I don't feel all great like out there dancing, going, yeah, right.
You're
Yeah,
doing
I'm not gonna do
the
a lot of
trending
that, but
dances.
I was at Henry VIII's house yesterday doing some Six Broadway musical with my daughter and just having some fun, but,
I
um,
love that. So
it
no,
kinda
everybody
shows the
go
human
find that
side of
video.
you too. People have said, like, they feel a connection on social with you, like they've known you for 200 years, and when you show a little more personality, so it depends
Mhm.
what you want them to know about you.
I love that. Well, I say, in a year from now, we come back, we do another episode, and you tell us all the findings that you have,
Oh,
how
jeez.
everything, all the experiment that you have tried.
Well, my
It might be really
25-year-old
good.
pilot, he said, "Mom, you're so cringy, I'm so embarrassed." So, yeah, we'll see.
I love it though, but you're trying. It's that's the whole thing. You're getting out there. So I
Yeah.
love it. And I'm gonna go become a follower so I can go see
Oh,
these.
jeez.
They'll be good. So you've got us on here. And don't forget, I'll put her information in the show notes so everybody listening can go check it out.
Yeah,
Get some
well,
inspiration.
always
But
appreciate you
this
guys and what you're doing at Travefy. You guys have an amazing brand. If you guys haven't been looking at their whole tech stack, it needs to be a part of your flow, and Steph's your girl. Steph's your girl.
Yes. Oh, thank see, we did not tell her to say this. Thank you so much. And I think it also does there's a lot that, I think is really good with this episode in particular. If you're not a Travefy user listening to this, you can implement a lot of the stuff you just talked about into Travefy to help you remember things. You can create task lists, and it could be just for yourself too. It doesn't have to always be an automation going to your client. It could be, like keeping your information for a client in the CRM. I mean, there's just so many ways it can help. So
Yeah,
we are here for
you
you.
guys are doing an amazing job. So,
Well,
thanks for
thank
having
you. And
me.
it's absolutely. Thank you so much. This is awesome. And thanks everyone so much for tuning in to the Lounge by Travefy, the sales workshop series. And if you haven't caught the first two episodes yet, go back and listen to those because they will help you build really the full picture of your sales process from mindset to marketing to workflow. Basically, like a lot we talked about today and just adding even more to it. So also be sure if you're not already subscribed so you don't miss our final episode in the series coming soon. And then, of course, all the episodes coming after. And if today's conversation gave you a few aha moments, which I'm sure they did, make sure to share it with another advisor who's looking to grow their business too. And also, don't forget, stay in the loop with all things Travefy from our new features, upcoming webinars, training events. Join the Travefy newsletter. That's in the show notes that you can find as well. And thank you again for joining us today. And as always, stay inspired, keep selling smarter, and we'll catch you on the next flight.